What really happens when a man pretends he cannot hear? How does a quiet husband, dismissed as weak and barely there, use one secret month of regained hearing to dismantle the lies spoken in front of him? This is the story of how silence became my greatest ally, and how every whispered insult shaped the reckoning that followed. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I lost my hearing on a Tuesday. One moment I was polishing a platinum band in my workshop, listening to the steady hum of the ventilation system, and the next, nothing. Just a hollow pressure in both ears, like someone had stuffed cotton deep inside my skull. The audiologist called it sudden sensorineural hearing loss. Rare, sometimes reversible, sometimes permanent. She told me to wait, to hope, to adjust. Lauren, my wife, seemed concerned at first. She wrote notes on her phone, spoke slowly while facing me directly, touched my shoulder when she entered a room. For about 3 days. Then the notes stopped. The slow speech became exaggerated mouthing, like I was a child who couldn't read lips. The touches turned into impatient taps, then disappeared entirely. Within 2 weeks, she stopped looking at me when she spoke. Within 3, she stopped speaking to me at all unless absolutely necessary. I became furniture. That's what I heard her call me later, once I could hear again. Furniture. A quiet decoration taking up space in her carefully curated life. The kitchen became the first battlefield, though I didn't recognize it as such initially. I was sitting at the small table near the window, drinking coffee, watching Lauren prepare her lunch. She moved efficiently, her back to me, phone wedged between her shoulder and ear. "He just sits there, Mom, all day. I mean, what am I supposed to do with that?" I couldn't hear her mother's response. I wasn't supposed to hear Lauren either, but I could read her body language, the sharp gestures, the way she gripped the counter. No, he can't hear me. I'm telling you, it's like living with a useless ghost who still expects dinner and clean laundry. She laughed then, a bright, dismissive sound that cut through the kitchen like a blade. I kept my face neutral, my eyes on my coffee. I'd learned that any reaction, confusion, hurt, curiosity, invited her irritation. Better to seem completely absent, lost in my own silent world. She turned toward me briefly, checking. I didn't meet her eyes. Satisfied, she continued. "Honestly, I don't know why I'm even trying anymore. It's not like he contributes anything real. The jewelry thing barely covers his own expenses." That wasn't true. My custom work brought in steady income, enough to cover half our mortgage, all my business costs, and a comfortable cushion in savings. But Lauren had always resented that I worked with my hands, that I preferred the quiet solitude of my workshop to her social events and networking dinners. "Yeah, I know. You warned me." "He's too quiet, Lauren, too passive. You'll get bored." "Well, guess what, Mom? You were right." She ended the call and left the kitchen without looking at me once. I sat there for another 10 minutes, finishing my coffee, feeling something cold settle into my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just a creeping awareness that the woman I'd married was becoming a stranger. That evening we had dinner at Marlene's enormous colonial. Lauren had marked the date as non-negotiable, so I went without protest. Marlene greeted her daughter with warmth and me with a restrained smile. She'd never liked me. Too quiet, too small town, too content. Dinner was overcooked pot roast. While I ate, they talked about me openly, assuming I caught nothing. "He's like a puppy," Marlene said. "A decoration," Lauren added. "One that came with the house. At least he's house-trained." They laughed. I kept chewing, keeping my face neutral while something inside me froze. Afterward, we moved to the living room. They settled on the couch with more wine. I sat alone by the window. Their conversation continued. About me, around me. I caught only fragments through lip reading, but their gestures were clear. Dismissal, frustration, pity. Then Lauren's phone lit up. I wasn't trying to read it, but the text was large enough. "He'll sign anything. He can't even hear us." Lauren quickly flipped the phone face down, and Marlene leaned in, whispered something. Lauren nodded, glanced at me, and looked away. I sat perfectly still, realizing they no longer saw me as a person, just an obstacle. And whatever they were planning, I needed to be ready. The jewelry workshop had always been my sanctuary. Tucked in a converted garage behind a small commercial strip, the workshop smelled of metal polish and solder flux. 3 workbenches, my casting setup in the back, a small showroom up front. 15 years of work, one tool at a time. I wasn't famous, but I was steady. Honest work, pieces that lasted. Lauren used to visit in the early years. Bring lunch, ask about designs. Somewhere along the line she stopped. First she called it the garage, then the hobby. Eventually she pretended it didn't exist. Victor, my assistant, noticed. Sharp-eyed, quiet, better at stone setting than I ever was. He didn't pry, but he always saw more than he said. The morning after Marlene's dinner, I arrived early. The workshop was silent except for ventilation hum. I laid out tools, trying to settle my mind, trying not to think about Marlene calling me a house-trained puppy, trying not to think about the text on Lauren's phone. He'll sign anything. He can't even hear us. Victor arrived, hesitated, studying my face. I nodded that I was fine. He didn't believe it, but went to his bench. While he worked, my mind drifted through the past year, moments that hadn't seemed important then. Lauren bringing home refinancing documents for a better rate, a new credit card for points, a banking update for fraud protection, papers I'd signed without thinking because I trusted her, because I thought we were a team, but my hearing had faded 4 months ago, and her kindness had faded long before that. I opened the banking app. Our checking looked normal. When I clicked our savings account, the error message appeared. Access restricted. Contact your branch. I stared at it, numb. Victor looked up, eyebrow raised. I forced a smile. Just tired. After he left, I stayed late, telling Lauren I was doing inventory. I wasn't. I pulled up our financial records. The savings account had been modified 3 months earlier. Lauren's name remained. Mine had been removed. $38,000. Money we'd built slowly, year by year. Not stolen. Just shifted. Just locked away from me. The intent couldn't have been clearer. She was preparing to leave, or preparing to shove me out first. And she was using my hearing loss like a wedge. Assuming I was too slow, too confused, too dependent to notice anything she did, I opened a notebook and started writing. Dates, documents, moments that now felt like clues, things I'd signed, explanations she'd given, the first times she'd spoken about me like an inconvenience instead of a partner. The list grew quickly. At 9, my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "Where are you? Dinner is cold." I replied, "Working late. Eat without me." Her answer came fast, flat. "Whatever." I put the phone down, took a breath, and kept writing. For the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I was waking up. The next day, I drove to Marlene's house. Lauren had mentioned needing to drop off some decorating samples for her mother, something about a bathroom remodel. I offered to help carry boxes, played the dutiful son-in-law, kept my expression pleasantly blank. Marlene answered the door in tennis whites, fresh from the country club. She looked me over with barely concealed distaste, then brightened when she saw Lauren emerging from the car with fabric swatches. "Oh, honey, perfect timing. Come in, come in." I followed them inside, carrying a box of tile samples. They immediately launched into animated discussion about grout colors and vanity styles, waving their hands, laughing at private jokes. I set the box down in the foyer and drifted toward the living room, settling into that same armchair by the window, invisible again, expected. They moved into the kitchen, spreading samples across the counter. Their voices carried clearly through the open floor plan, too clearly for someone supposedly deaf, but they didn't moderate their volume or their... "He looks worse," Marlene said. "Thinner. Is he eating?" "I don't know, Mom. I'm not his keeper." "You're his wife." "Barely." Lauren's voice dropped slightly, but not enough. "I mean, what's the point anymore? He can't hold a conversation. He doesn't go anywhere. He just sits in that workshop making little rings for people too cheap to buy real jewelry." "Have you spoken to the lawyer yet?" My hands tightened on the armrest. I kept my breathing steady, my face turned toward the window. "Next week. She said the hearing thing actually makes it easier. Medical hardship, diminished capacity, that kind of language. We can push for full asset protection on my side." "Good. You've supported him long enough." I almost laughed. Supported me. I'd paid half of everything for 15 years. But in Marlene's world, my work didn't count as real income. Not compared to Lauren's part-time boutique job that barely covered her car payment. "I just need him to sign a few more things," Lauren continued. "The business restructuring, the updated trust documents. Ms. Porter said it's better if he does it voluntarily now rather than fighting over it later." "Can you even get him to understand what he's signing?" "Mom, he doesn't need to understand. He just needs to sign. That's the whole point." They laughed together. That same synchronized sound, sharp and satisfied. I sat in the armchair, staring out at Marlene's perfectly manicured lawn, and felt the last thread of whatever I'd been holding onto simply snap. Not with drama, not with rage. Just a clean, quiet break. I stood slowly, walked to the foyer, picked up my keys from the side table. Lauren glanced over, waved absently, already turning back to her fabric swatches. I let myself out and drove home in silence. That night, Lauren came home late, smelling of wine and carrying shopping bags from the boutique. She dropped them in the entryway, kicked off her shoes, walked past me without acknowledgement. I sat in the living room with a book I wasn't reading, listening to her bang around in the bedroom, talking on the phone to someone. Her voice carried through the walls, loud and careless. No, he's fine. Totally clueless. I swear it's like he's not even here anymore. Pause. Yeah, exactly. The lawyer said another month, maybe 2, and we can start the real process. Once everything's transferred and protected, it won't matter what he hears or doesn't hear. Pause. Laughter. God, I know. I should have done this years ago. But better late than never, right? I closed my book carefully, set it on the coffee table, and stared at the dark television screen. Better late than never. Yes. She was right about that. The audiology clinic smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Dr. Keene's office sat on the 3rd floor of a medical complex, all beige walls and motivational posters about communication. I'd been coming here once a month since the hearing loss, each visit a mix of tests and gentle encouragement. Give it time, she'd say. The body can surprise us. I sat in the soundproof booth, wearing the heavy headphones, pressing the button each time I heard a tone. The routine was familiar now. High frequencies, low frequencies, speech recognition tests. Dr. Keene watched through the glass, making notes on her tablet. When the tests finished, she gestured for me to return to her consultation room. I sat across from her desk, waiting. She pulled up my results on a large monitor, comparing them to previous visits. Her expression shifted. Surprise, then careful professional neutrality. Aaron, she said slowly, your hearing has improved significantly. I kept my face neutral. How significantly? Near complete recovery in both ears. Some minor high-frequency loss, but well within normal range for your age. It's remarkable, honestly. Sudden losses like yours rarely resolve this completely. She showed me the graphs, the comparative data. My hearing had been returning gradually over the past month, so slowly I hadn't consciously noticed the shift. Or maybe I had noticed, but hadn't wanted to acknowledge it, hadn't wanted to face what it meant. This is wonderful news, Dr. Keene continued. You must be thrilled. Yes, I said quietly. Thrilled. She caught something in my tone, studied me more carefully. Are you all right? I'm fine, just processing. Of course, it's a lot to take in. She printed out the official report, handed it to me. I'll send this to your primary care physician as well. You'll want to update your medical records, notify your insurance, let your family know. Actually, I interrupted, I'd like to keep this confidential for now. Her pen paused. Confidential? Just for a little while. Personal reasons. Dr. Keene's expression shifted again, professional warmth cooling into something more cautious. She'd been a clinician long enough to recognize complicated family situations, to know when not to press. That's your right, she said carefully. But I do need to document the recovery officially. It's already in your medical record. I understand. I just mean, I'd prefer you not send updates to anyone else yet. Not my insurance, not my primary doctor, not until I'm ready. I can hold off on external notifications for a reasonable period. Say 2 weeks? That works, thank you. She nodded, making a note on my file. Aaron, if you're dealing with something difficult, I'm fine, I said again more firmly. Really, I just need time to adjust. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did need time, just not for the reasons she assumed. I left the clinic with the printed report folded in my jacket pocket, drove to a small park near the river, and sat on a bench overlooking the water. The sounds washed over me. Birds, distant traffic, children playing on the far playground, the rustle of leaves in the wind. All of it clear and sharp and undeniable. I could hear everything, which meant I'd been hearing everything for weeks now. Lauren's phone calls, her conversations with Marlene, the casual cruelty she thought was private. I pulled out my phone, opened a new note, and started typing everything I could remember. Every insult, every plan, every mention of lawyers and asset transfers, and getting me to sign documents I supposedly couldn't understand. The list filled 3 screens, then I opened a new folder in my Photos app, named it Receipts. Generic enough that Lauren wouldn't think twice if she saw it, specific enough that I'd know exactly what it contained. I sat on that bench for over an hour, organizing my thoughts, building a framework. This wasn't about anger anymore. Anger was useless, loud, easily dismissed. This was about precision, about documentation, about making absolutely certain that when I finally acted, the consequences would be permanent. The sun dropped lower, painting the river gold and orange. A jogger passed, headphones in, oblivious. A couple walked by with their dog, arguing about dinner plans. Normal people living normal lives, not sitting on park benches plotting legal strategy against their own spouses. But then, their spouses probably weren't systematically trying to rob them blind while pretending concern. I drove home as dusk settled. Lauren's car was already in the driveway, which was unusual for a weekday. She typically stayed late at the boutique, networking with clients and vendors. Inside, she was in the kitchen, phone wedged between shoulder and ear again, chopping vegetables with aggressive efficiency. "No, Mom, I told you. Next Wednesday. That's when Ms. Porter has the final documents ready." Pause. "Yes, all of them. The business restructuring, the trust amendment, everything. She said once he signs, we're protected, no matter what happens later." I set my keys on the counter, moved to the refrigerator. Lauren glanced at me, smiled. That thin, performative smile she used when Marlene was listening. "Yeah, he's home now. Probably had a long day making earrings or whatever." She laughed. "Okay, Mom. Love you too." She ended the call, continued chopping. I pulled out leftovers, began heating them in the microwave. "Good day?" she asked, not looking up. I nodded. "Doctor appointment?" I nodded again. "Everything okay?" Another nod. She shrugged, clearly satisfied with my non-answers, and returned her attention to dinner prep. I watched her move around the kitchen, my kitchen, in the house we'd bought together, filled with things we'd chosen together, and felt nothing but cold calculation. Wednesday. Final documents. Ms. Porter. I had 6 days. The microwave beeped. I took my plate to the living room, sat in my usual spot, and ate while Lauren continued cooking. She joined me eventually, settling on the opposite end of the couch with her own meal, scrolling through her phone. We sat there for 30 minutes, eating, not speaking, existing in the same space like strangers on a bus. She had no idea I could hear her breathing. The small sighs of irritation, the frustrated exhales when I shifted position, the barely audible muttering when I reached for the remote. I could hear all of it, and I was counting every single sound. The attorney's office occupied the 4th floor of a downtown building with Art Deco flourishes and dated carpet. Ms. Porter, the same attorney whose name Lauren had mentioned, had handled some business contracts for me years ago when I first established the workshop as an LLC. She was competent, direct, and expensive. I called her office early Thursday morning. "Mr. Hale," she said when her assistant connected us. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need to review some documents, personal and business, as soon as possible." There was a pause. In the background, I heard papers shuffling. "I actually have your file right here. Funny coincidence. Is this about the trust restructuring your wife initiated?" My grip tightened on the phone. "That's part of it, but I need to discuss everything in person, confidentially." Her tone shifted, sharpening with professional interest. "I have an opening tomorrow at 2. Does that work?" "Perfect." I hung up and sat in my workshop, staring at nothing. So Lauren had already approached Ms. Porter, already started the paperwork, already assumed I'd sign whatever she put in front of me. The assumption was almost insulting in its confidence. Friday afternoon, I drove downtown, parked in the building's garage, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Ms. Porter's assistant, a young woman with excellent posture and a cool smile, directed me to a conference room. Ms. Porter entered 5 minutes later, carrying a thick folder and a tablet. She was 48, iron gray hair cut precisely at her shoulders, wearing a navy suit that suggested competence without flash. "Aaron," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Good to see you, though I'll admit the circumstances are puzzling." "Why's that?" She set the folder on the table, opened it. "Your wife contacted me 3 weeks ago, said you'd lost your hearing, that managing joint assets was becoming complicated, and that you both wanted to restructure things for simplicity and protection. She was very concerned about your well-being." I'm sure she was. Ms. Porter caught my tone, studied me more carefully. "Your hearing seems fine now. It recovered. Recently." "I see." She pulled out several documents, spread them across the table. "And does your wife know about this recovery?" "Not yet." Ms. Porter sat back, folding her hands. "Mr. Hale, I'm going to be very direct with you. The documents your wife asked me to prepare would transfer primary control of your shared assets to her name, restructure your business ownership to limit your access to company accounts, and establish a special needs trust with her as trustee, ostensibly to protect you in case of further medical complications." "And if I signed these documents?" "You'd essentially be declaring yourself legally dependent. It wouldn't quite reach the level of conservatorship, but the practical effect would be similar. She'd control your finances, your business, your medical decisions if needed. You'd retain nominal ownership, but no real authority. The cold thing in my chest had become ice. And you were going to let me sign these? I was going to explain them to you in detail and ensure you understood exactly what you were agreeing to. Despite what your wife implied, I don't facilitate exploitation. But she presented this as a mutual decision, something you both wanted for practical reasons. It's not mutual. No, Ms. Porter said quietly. I didn't think it was. The paperwork felt too aggressive, too one-sided. That's why I built in several safeguards and required a personal meeting before anything was finalized. I don't like being used as a weapon. I leaned forward. I need different documents. Can you help me? That depends on what you need. I pulled out my notebook, the one I'd been filling with dates and details. I need to protect my business assets, separate my personal savings, establish clear documentation of what I own versus what's joint property, and create a paper trail showing I'm of sound mind and full capacity. Ms. Porter picked up her tablet, started taking notes. And you want this done before your wife knows your hearing has returned? Yes. Why? Because once she knows, she'll change tactics. She'll come up with new explanations, new reasons why I should sign things. She'll make it about trust and partnership and how hurt she is that I don't believe her. And some part of me might actually listen. Ms. Porter nodded slowly. You still love her. I still remember loving her. That's dangerous enough. She was quiet for a moment, considering. What you're describing is legal, but it's aggressive. It will essentially ensure that in any separation or divorce, your individual assets are clearly protected and her claims are limited. It's the kind of thing people do when they're preparing for war. Then it's perfect. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. The Workshop LLC needed updated operating agreements clarifying that I was the sole owner and operator. My personal savings account needed to be moved to an individual account at a different bank. We drafted a formal statement from Dr. Keene confirming my recovered hearing and mental competence. We created a timeline documenting every financial change Lauren had made in the past year. This will take a few days to finalize, Ms. Porter said as we wrapped up. Some of these changes require notarization, bank processing, state filings. I can have most of it ready by Wednesday. The same day, Lauren expected me to sign her documents. That works, I said. Mr. Hale, Aaron, I should mention that this approach, while legal, will likely end your marriage. Once you file these protections, there's no pretending things are fine. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Lauren's laughter in Marlene's kitchen, her text messages about signing anything, her casual cruelty delivered in the confidence of my silence. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. I left Ms. Porter's office and drove to a coffee shop across town, somewhere Lauren never visited. I bought an overpriced latte and sat in a corner booth, organizing the photographs and recordings I'd been collecting on my phone. The receipts folder now held screenshots of our savings account access restriction, photos of documents Lauren had brought home for me to sign, captured before I signed them, voice memos from her phone calls with Marlene, transcripts I'd typed of their conversations, bank statements showing unexplained transfers. The text message preview about signing anything, it wasn't everything. Some conversations had been too quiet or too private to capture clearly. But it was enough. Enough to establish pattern, intent, and opportunity. I spent an hour organizing it all into a chronological folder structure, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and emailed copies to Ms. Porter's secure server. Then I sat back, drank my latte, and watched people come and go. Students studying, couples on dates, business people taking video calls. All of them living in a world where their spouses probably weren't systematically betraying them. Lucky them. My phone buzzed. Lauren. Dinner at Mom's tonight, 6:30. Don't be late. I typed back, okay. Her response, bring wine. I stopped at a liquor store on the way home, bought an expensive Pinot Noir Marlene would approve of, and arrived at her house at exactly 6:30. Marlene greeted me with her usual tight smile. Lauren was already inside, helping set the table, wearing the dress she saved for important occasions. They'd invited 2 other couples, Marlene's tennis friends and their husbands, a small dinner party. I handed over the wine. Marlene examined the label, nodded approval, and directed me to the living room where the men were watching golf. I settled into a chair, accepted a beer I wouldn't drink, and watched the television without seeing it. Around me, the men discussed handicaps and course conditions and their latest equipment purchases. I nodded occasionally, smiled when they laughed, played the role. In the dining room, I could hear the women talking. Lauren's voice carried clearly, animated, and bright. Oh, he's doing much better. Really adjusting well. One of the tennis friends. Must be so hard for both of you. It has its challenges. Lauren said carefully. But we're managing. Actually, we're doing some practical planning next week. Estate stuff, business reorganization, just being smart about the future. That's so responsible of you. Well, someone has to think ahead. Laughter. Warm, supportive, completely fooled. I sat in the living room, holding my beer, listening to my wife build her narrative, and felt nothing but that cold, clear focus. Wednesday was coming, and I was ready. Sunday morning, I went to the bank. The branch manager, a woman named Helen Cross, who'd handled our accounts for years, greeted me with professional warmth. I asked to speak privately. She led me to a small office in the back. "What can I help you with today, Aaron?" I pulled out the folder Ms. Porter had prepared. I need to open an individual savings account and transfer funds from my business account. Also, I need to understand what happened to my access on our joint savings. Helen's expression shifted. "Your wife made that change 6 weeks ago. She said you'd agreed to consolidate accounts for simplification." "I didn't agree. I wasn't asked." "Oh." Helen pulled up her computer, typed quickly. "I see. The paperwork she submitted had your signature. May I see it?" She hesitated, then printed a copy and slid it across the desk. There was my signature, next to a paragraph of dense legal text about account modification and access restructuring. I recognized my handwriting, but not the document itself. When did I supposedly sign this? Helen checked her screen. "It's dated 2 months ago. Mrs. Hale brought it in personally, said you'd both discussed it at length." 2 months ago, before my hearing loss. Back when I still trusted enough to sign papers Lauren brought home, trusting her explanations about refinancing or fraud protection or better interest rates. I'd signed my own financial execution without even reading it. "I want that access restored," I said quietly, "and I want a new individual account that only I control." Helen nodded slowly, already typing. "I'll need some additional documentation, proof of identity, updated contact information, and I should mention, any changes to the joint savings will trigger a notification to both account holders." "That's fine." "Are you sure? It might create some household tension." "I'm sure." We spent 40 minutes processing paperwork. New account opened, funds transferred from my business reserves, joint savings access restored, though there was barely anything left in it anyway. Lauren had been gradually moving money out over the past month, small enough amounts to avoid automatic alerts, but consistent enough to drain $38,000 down to $4,000. When we finished, Helen handed me the new account information in a sealed envelope. "Aaron," she said carefully, "I've been in banking a long time. I've seen a lot of financial abuse, usually against women, but not always. If you need resources, support services." "I have a lawyer," I said, "but thank you." She nodded, walked me out. I left the bank with my new account secured and drove to the workshop. Victor was already there, working on a complicated 3-stone setting. He looked up when I entered, took in my expression, returned to his work without comment. I sat at my bench and tried to focus on a repair job, a vintage watch that needed a new crystal. My hands were steady, but my mind kept circling. Wednesday, 2 days away. Ms. Porter had called Friday evening to confirm everything was on track. The restructured business documents would be ready. The personal asset declarations would be notarized. The medical certification from Dr. Keene would be official. All I had to do was sign them before Lauren presented her own paperwork. Then what? She'd be angry, hurt. She'd accuse me of betrayal, of paranoia, of breaking trust. She'd call Marlene, who'd add her own accusations. They'd paint me as the villain, the suspicious husband who'd turned his medical recovery into a weapon. And maybe they'd be right. Maybe I was becoming something cold and calculating and vengeful. But then I remembered her laughter. "He'll sign anything." A quiet decoration? And barely there. The watch crystal slipped from my tweezers, bounced across the bench. Victor glanced over but said nothing. I retrieved the crystal, set it carefully aside, and pulled out my phone instead. Opened the calendar. Lauren had blocked Wednesday evening as important meeting, Mr. Porter. She expected both of us to attend. Expected me to walk into that conference room, sit quietly while documents were explained in slow, simple language, and sign away my autonomy with a trusting smile. I typed a response to the calendar invitation. Confirmed. Then I opened a new text to Lauren. "Looking forward to Wednesday." She responded immediately. "Me too. It'll make everything easier." I set the phone down and returned to the watch. This time my hands were perfectly steady. Monday passed in careful routine, workshop in the morning, lunch at the coffee shop where I reviewed documents on my laptop, afternoon appointments with clients who needed consultations on custom pieces, home by 6, dinner with Lauren that consisted of reheated pasta and silence, evenings spent in separate rooms. She was on the phone constantly, always stepping into the bedroom or the garage when calls came in. I didn't bother trying to listen. I knew enough. Tuesday, Ms. Porter called. "Everything's ready. I've scheduled a notary for tomorrow at 1. Come to my office. We'll finalize your documents, and then you can decide how to handle the 3 o'clock meeting your wife scheduled. I'll be there at 1. Aaron, have you thought about what you're going to say to her?" I hadn't. Not really. Every script I'd imagined felt either too dramatic or too cold, too much explanation or not enough. The truth was, I didn't know what I'd say when the moment came. "I'll figure it out," I said. "All right. But remember, once you sign these protections, you can't unsign them without significant legal effort. This is permanent. Are you certain?" I thought about Sunday morning at the bank, about Helen's careful sympathy and the account statements showing systematic theft, about Lauren's bright laughter and Marlene's casual cruelty and that text message glowing in the dark. He can't even hear us. I'm certain. Tuesday evening, Lauren came home with shopping bags and champagne. "What's the occasion?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She smiled, genuinely, for the first time in months. "Just celebrating a little early. Tomorrow's going to be such a relief, getting all this paperwork finished. I thought we could toast to new beginnings." New beginnings. Her freedom from the burden of a dependent husband, her access to assets I'd helped build, her clean exit strategy. "Sounds nice," I said. We drank the champagne on the couch, watching a home improvement show neither of us cared about. Lauren was relaxed, almost affectionate. She touched my shoulder once, laughed at something on screen, refilled our glasses. It was the best evening we'd had in over a year, and it was built entirely on her confidence that tomorrow I'd sign away everything while she smiled and pretended it was for my own good. I finished my champagne, kissed her forehead, and went to bed early. She stayed up, probably texting Marlene or Ms. Porter or whoever else was part of her circle of conspirators. I lay in the dark, listening to her move around the house, listening to her hum something cheerful and off-key. Tomorrow, I'd take that sound away, and I was completely, absolutely ready. Wednesday morning tasted like metal and stale coffee. I dressed carefully, pressed slacks, button-down shirt, the blazer I saved for client meetings. Lauren noticed, smiled approvingly. "You look nice," she said. "Professional." "Important day," I said. "Yes, it really is." We drove separately downtown. Lauren needed to stop by the boutique first, she said. I suspected she wanted time to rehearse with Marlene, to make sure all the explanations were consistent, all the sympathetic expressions properly calibrated. I parked in the building garage at 12:30 and took the elevator to Ms. Porter's floor. Her assistant showed me directly to the conference room where a notary was already waiting, an older man with reading glasses and a severe expression. Ms. Porter entered with 2 thick folders. "Let's review everything one final time," she said. We spent 90 minutes going through each document. The updated LLC operating agreement establishing sole ownership of the workshop, the declaration of separate property for my business assets and equipment, the new individual account statements, the transfer of my retirement accounts into my name only, the medical certification from Dr. Keene, the timeline of financial changes Lauren had made without genuine consent. Each page represented a wall, a boundary, a locked door. I signed them all. The notary witnessed, stamped, logged everything in his register. Ms. Porter organized the documents into a leather portfolio. "These are your copies," she said. "Everything's been filed appropriately with the state and county. Your assets are now clearly protected as separate property. Your business cannot be claimed as joint. Your accounts are secure. And if she contests it, she can try, but you have documentation showing these assets were always yours individually, that you were of sound mind and full capacity when you made these protections, and that her attempts to gain control were made under false pretenses, namely claiming you were incapacitated when you weren't. No judge will side with her." I checked my watch. 2:45. "She'll be here in 15 minutes, I said. "Do you want me to tell her the meeting's canceled?" "No, I want to tell her myself." Ms. Porter nodded slowly. "How much do you want me to reveal?" "Everything." Her assistant knocked, poked her head in. "Mrs. Hale is here, with her mother." Of course, Marlene had come. Moral support for Lauren. Another witness to my supposed helplessness. "Show them in," Ms. Porter said. I stood, moved to the window, looked out over downtown. Behind me, I heard them enter. Lauren's light footsteps, Marlene's heavier tread, the rustle of coats and purses. "Oh, Aaron's already here," Lauren said brightly. "Perfect. This won't take long." I turned. Lauren looked radiant. Expensive dress, professional makeup, confident smile. Marlene stood beside her, arms folded, already wearing an expression of grim satisfaction. They both stopped when they saw Ms. Porter's face. "Please sit down," Ms. Porter said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. Lauren's smile faltered. "Is something wrong?" "That depends on your perspective," Ms. Porter said. "We have some things to discuss before we get to the documents you asked me to prepare." Lauren sat slowly. Marlene remained standing, suspicious. "What things?" Lauren asked. Ms. Porter opened a folder, pulled out the medical report. "First, you should know that Aaron's hearing has fully recovered. He's been able to hear normally for approximately 4 weeks." The color drained from Lauren's face. "That's wonderful news," she said carefully. "Why didn't you tell me?" I spoke for the first time. "Because I wanted to hear what you'd say when you thought I couldn't." Silence. Marlene's hand tightened on the back of Lauren's chair. "I don't understand," Lauren said. "What are you talking about?" Ms. Porter slid a printed transcript across the table. "This is a record of conversations Mr. Hale overheard between you and your mother, discussions about asset transfer, about his supposed incapacity, about getting him to sign documents he wouldn't understand." Lauren stared at the transcript. Her hands were shaking. "You were spying on me?" "I was listening to you," I said quietly. "In my own house, in your mother's house. Everywhere you felt safe talking about me like I was furniture." Marlene finally sat down, her face hardening. "This is absurd. Lauren was trying to help you, to protect you. By removing my name from our savings account, by restructuring my business ownership without my knowledge, by preparing documents that would declare me legally dependent." I leaned forward. "I've seen the paperwork, Marlene. All of it. I know exactly what you two were planning." Ms. Porter pulled out another folder. "Mrs. Hale, the documents you asked me to prepare are here, but I'm required to inform you that Mr. Hale has already executed his own set of protective documents. His business assets are now clearly established as separate property. His personal accounts have been secured. His medical records confirm full capacity. And he has documentation showing that recent financial changes were made without his informed consent." Lauren's hands dropped to her lap. "Aaron, please. This is a misunderstanding. I was just trying to make things easier." "Easier for who?" "For both of us. You were struggling. You couldn't hear. I thought..." "You thought you could use my disability to rob me blind while pretending it was for my own good. That's not fair." "Fair?" The word came out harder than I intended. "You called me furniture, a decoration. You told your mother I was barely there, barely contributing, basically useless. You planned to take everything I'd built and leave me with nothing but nominal ownership and your charity." Tears started down Lauren's face. Real ones, I thought. Or convincing enough. "I didn't mean those things. I was frustrated. I was venting to my mother. For weeks, months, every conversation, every phone call. You weren't venting, Lauren. You were planning, and you were using my silence as cover." Marlene stood abruptly. "You recorded private conversations? That's illegal." "Actually," Ms. Porter interrupted, "in this state, one-party consent applies. If Mr. Hale was present during the conversations, he had every legal right to record them." "This is entrapment." "This is documentation," Ms. Porter said firmly. "Documentation that your daughter attempted to exploit a medical condition for financial gain. Documentation that will matter significantly if this proceeds to divorce court." The word hung in the air like smoke. Lauren looked up at me, mascara streaking. "Divorce? Aaron, no, please. We can fix this. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll put everything back." "It's already back," I said quietly. "My accounts, my business, my assets. All protected, all documented, all mine." "Then what do you want?" I stood, picked up my portfolio. "I want you to understand that I heard every word, every insult, every plan, every moment you thought I was too deaf and too stupid to notice. I want you to live with knowing that your own cruelty gave me exactly the ammunition I needed to protect myself from you. Aaron, I continued, my voice steady and cold, you to tell your mother that the quiet, useless decoration just locked you out of everything you thought you'd take. And I want you both to understand that this is permanent." I walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Lauren was crying into her hands. Marlene was staring at the transcripts with something like horror. Ms. Porter sat calmly, waiting. "The documents you wanted me to sign are on the table," I said. "Feel free to read them. They're quite thorough. Ms. Porter did excellent work, just not for the client she expected." I left the conference room, walked past the startled assistant, took the elevator down to the parking garage. My hands were steady, my breathing was calm, and for the first time in months, The cold thing in my chest felt almost warm. I drove to the workshop and told Victor to take the rest of the day off. He looked at me for a long moment, taking in whatever my face was showing, and nodded. "You okay, boss?" "Getting there." He grabbed his jacket and left without further questions. Good man. Yeah, I locked the door behind him, turned off the overhead lights, sat at my bench in the dimness. The familiar shapes surrounded me. Tools, equipment, half-finished projects. My space. Built by my hands, paid for by my work, mine. My phone started buzzing around 4. Lauren calling. I let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times. Then Marlene called twice. Then Lauren again. I turned the phone face down and started working on a pendant I'd been designing, a custom piece for a client's 50th anniversary. Intricate filigree work, requiring absolute focus. My hands moved automatically, following patterns I'd executed 1,000 times. The repetition was meditative, calming. Around 6, someone knocked on the workshop door. Heavy, insistent. I ignored it. The knocking continued for 5 minutes, then stopped. My phone lit up with texts. Lauren, please come home. We need to talk. Lauren, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please. Lauren, Aaron, I love you. Don't do this. Marlene, this is cruel and childish. Call your wife. Lauren, Mom is leaving. It's just me. Please come home. I set the phone down and returned to the filigree work. At 7:30, Victor called. Sorry to bother you, boss, but your wife just showed up at my apartment. I closed my eyes. What did she say? Asked where you were. Asked if I'd seen you. Asked if I knew what was happening. I told her I didn't know anything and she should probably call you directly. He paused. She looked pretty upset. Thanks for the heads up. You need anything? No, I'm good. I hung up and finally checked Lauren's voicemails. 10 of them. Progressively more desperate. The first few were angry. How dare I embarrass her? How could I be so cruel? How was this fair? The middle ones were pleading. She'd made mistakes. She'd fix everything. Please just talk to her. The last one was barely coherent, crying and apologizing and begging me not to give up on us. I deleted them all. Around 9, I locked up the workshop and drove to a hotel near the airport, checked in under my own name, paid with my new separate credit card, and rode the elevator to a quiet room on the 3rd floor. The space was generic. Beige walls, corporate art, scratchy comforter. Perfect. I ordered room service, ate a mediocre burger while watching cable news, took a long shower, and lay in the unfamiliar bed staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Ms. Porter. Your wife's attorney contacted me. She wants to discuss reconciliation options. How should I respond? I typed back, tell them to file divorce papers if they want to discuss anything. Otherwise, we're done talking. Understood. For what it's worth, you handled today with remarkable composure. Thanks. Will you be all right? I thought about that question. Was I all right? My marriage was over. My wife's betrayal was documented and permanent. I'd just spent months listening to the person I'd loved tear me apart in whispers, and I'd responded by dismantling her plans with legal precision. Was I all right? Yes, I typed. I will be. I slept better than I had in months. Thursday morning, I checked out early and drove back to the house. Lauren's car was gone, probably at her mother's. I packed systematically. Clothes, personal items, important documents, the few things that mattered. Left everything else. The house felt hollow, already a place I used to live, rather than a home. I loaded my car and drove to a furnished apartment I'd found online. Short-term lease, month to month, quiet building near the workshop. Perfect for transitioning. Victor showed up around noon with coffee and sandwiches. Heard you might need lunch, he said. How'd you know where I was? You mentioned this place last week when the lease came up. Figured it was a possibility. He handed over the coffee. You want to talk about it? Not yet. Fair enough. We ate in companionable silence, sitting on the bare floor of the apartment's living room. Through the window, I could see a courtyard with a few struggling trees and a fountain that probably worked in summer. For what it's worth, Victor said eventually, I never liked her. I almost laughed. No? She always talked to you like you were a kid, even before the hearing thing, like you were some hobby she indulged instead of a person she respected. He crumpled his sandwich wrapper. You're better off. Maybe. Definitely. He left after lunch, clapping my shoulder on the way out. I spent the rest of the day setting up the apartment, minimal furniture delivery, basic kitchen supplies, clean sheets, making a space that was entirely mine. My phone stayed quiet. Lauren had apparently gotten the message. Friday morning, Ms. Porter called. Divorce papers were filed this morning. Your wife's attorney is pushing for mediation, claiming emotional distress and impaired judgment on your part due to medical issues. My medical issues are documented as resolved. I know. I've already submitted your records. They don't have a case, but they're going to try the sympathy angle. Confused husband, medical trauma, hasty decisions made in anger. Let them try. There's something else. Your wife cleaned out your joint checking account last night. About $6,000. I felt nothing. Can we recover it? Possibly. It's technically joint property, so she had access, but the timing and amount suggest spite rather than legitimate need. We can argue it in proceedings. Do it. How are you holding up? Fine. Settling into a new place. Getting back to work. Good. The next few weeks will involve a lot of paperwork and waiting. Try to maintain routine, don't engage with her directly, and forward any communication attempts to me. Understood. I hung up and went to the workshop. Victor had opened up, started the day's work, left fresh coffee in the pot. Normal operations continuing despite the personal chaos. I settled at my bench and pulled out the anniversary pendant. The filigree was nearly complete, just needed final polishing and stone setting. Precise, delicate work that required steady hands and absolute focus. My hands were perfectly steady. The pendant came together beautifully. 50 years of marriage celebrated in white gold and sapphires, traditional and elegant. The couple who'd commissioned it had been married since they were 19. They'd weathered children, careers, health scares, financial troubles, all the ordinary disasters of a long life together. And they'd made it. Still holding hands at client meetings, still finishing each other's sentences, still choosing each other. I packed the finished piece carefully, made a note to call them next week for pickup, and started on the next project. This was enough. The work, the craft, the quiet satisfaction of making beautiful things that lasted. This was enough. 3 weeks passed in careful routine. The divorce proceedings advanced steadily. Lauren's attorney tried several strategies, painting me as vindictive, claiming the recordings were obtained unethically, suggesting my hearing recovery was fabricated to justify cruelty. None of it stuck. Ms. Porter dismantled each argument with documentation and medical records. Lauren herself tried calling twice more, both times late at night, both times leaving rambling voicemails about mistakes and forgiveness and how we could still fix this. I forwarded them to Ms. Porter and didn't respond. The workshop thrived. Victor and I developed an efficient rhythm, handling an increasing number of custom commissions. Word was spreading somehow, probably from satisfied clients, that we did exceptional work at fair prices. The calendar filled 2 months out. I slept well, ate regularly, took walks in the evenings around the apartment complex, read books I'd been meaning to get to for years, lived quietly, and discovered I preferred it. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, Lauren showed up at the workshop. Victor saw her first, caught my eye, raised his eyebrows in question. I shook my head. Let her in. She entered hesitantly, overdressed for the garage setting in heels and a tailored coat. Her eyes were red-rimmed but carefully made up. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "Victor, take lunch," I said. He grabbed his jacket and left without a word. Lauren stood in the middle of the workshop, looking around like she'd never seen it before. Maybe she hadn't, not really. Not with eyes that actually saw it as a place of work and value. "This is nice," she said finally. "I never appreciated how much you've built here." I didn't respond. "Aaron, please. I know I have no right to ask, but can we just talk? Really talk?" "About what?" "About how sorry I am. About how badly I messed up. About how much I want to fix this." "You can't fix it." "I can try. I can spend the rest of my life trying if you'll let me." I set down my tools, looked at her directly. "Do you know what the worst part was?" She shook her head, tears starting. "It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the planning to take everything. It was the contempt. The way you talked about me like I was worthless. Like 15 years of partnership, of building a life together, of supporting each other. Like all of that meant nothing because I was too quiet, too modest, too content with what we had. I was wrong. You called me furniture, Lauren. A decoration. You told your mother I was barely there. You laughed about how easy it would be to push me out. I was venting. I was frustrated. For months. Consistently. You didn't accidentally let something slip in a bad moment. You systematically planned to exploit my disability while pretending to care for me. That's not venting. That's cruelty." She was crying openly now. "I know. You're right. I was horrible. I was selfish and cruel, and I treated you like you didn't matter. But I can change. I can be better. Please, Aaron, please don't give up on us." I wanted to feel something. Anger would have been appropriate. Or satisfaction at her distress. Or even pity. but there was just that same cold clarity I'd felt in Ms. Porter's office. "I already gave up," I said quietly. "The moment you told Marlene I'd sign anything because I couldn't hear you, that's when I understood exactly who you'd become. Or maybe who you always were." "That's not who I am." "It's exactly who you are. The only difference now is that I can hear you clearly." She stood there, shaking, ruined makeup streaking her face. For a moment, she looked genuinely broken, then something hardened in her expression. "So that's it? You're just done? After everything we've been through?" "After everything you put me through while thinking I couldn't hear it. Yes, I'm done." "This is about revenge." "No. Revenge would have been public, loud, destructive. This is just protection. I'm protecting myself from someone who proved she'd hurt me the moment she thought she could get away with it." Lauren's hands clenched. "You recorded me. You spied on me. You trapped me. I listened to you, in shared spaces, while you freely discussed how to rob me. That's not entrapment, Lauren. That's documentation." "My lawyer says—" "Your lawyer is wrong. Ms. Porter has already demonstrated that in every filing. You have no case. You have no leverage. You have nothing but your own words condemning you." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked toward the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. "I loved you," she said without turning around. "No," I said quietly. "You loved the idea of me, the quiet husband who wouldn't make demands or challenge you, who'd sign whatever you wanted and stay conveniently out of the way. You never loved me, Lauren. You just loved how easy I made your life." She left without another word. Victor returned 10 minutes later with sandwiches. "That looked intense," he said. "It's over now." "Good." We ate lunch and got back to work. The settlement came through in early December. Clean, simple, exactly as Ms. Porter had structured it. I kept the workshop, my business assets, my retirement accounts, my personal savings. Lauren kept the house, which she'd have to sell to afford, her car, and her own separate accounts. No alimony either direction, no ongoing entanglement. Done. "She's lucky you didn't push for damages," Ms. Porter said when I signed the final papers. "The documented exploitation of disability, the unauthorized financial changes, you could have buried her." I just wanted out. Mission accomplished. I walked out of her office with signed dissolution papers and drove to the workshop. December meant holiday commissions, engagement rings for Christmas proposals, anniversary gifts, family heirlooms, the busiest season. Victor had scheduled consultations all week, young couples nervous and excited, older partners celebrating milestones, people investing in symbols of commitment, of promises they intended to keep. Between appointments, I thought about Lauren's boutique. She'd mentioned a launch event months ago, back when I was supposedly deaf. Some kind of expansion announcement, new product line, investors she wanted to impress. I wondered if it had happened, if she'd stood in front of cameras and crowds, trying to project success while her personal life imploded. The holiday season passed in a blur of work and routine. Christmas came and went. I spent it at the workshop, catching up on projects, perfectly content. January brought slower business, time to experiment with new techniques. I started designing a collection of modern pieces, geometric and minimalist, different from my usual traditional work. Victor encouraged it. "Branch out, show range, you've got the skills." I had my work, my skills, my space, my autonomy. I had myself back, and that was more than enough. The boutique launch event was scheduled for a Saturday in late January. I only knew because Victor mentioned seeing it advertised. Lauren's interior decor store was expanding into custom furniture, partnering with local artisans, making a big public announcement with investors and press coverage. The day arrived cold and clear. At 1:30, I locked up the workshop and drove downtown. I parked 2 blocks from the boutique and walked slowly through the cold afternoon. The store's windows were decorated elaborately. Huge banners announcing the furniture line, displays of sleek modern pieces, professional lighting. Inside, I could see the crowd. Probably 50 people, maybe more. Well-dressed, holding champagne flutes, chatting in clusters. Investors, press, boutique clients. Lauren's carefully curated audience. I stood across the street, hands in my coat pockets, watching. Lauren appeared near the front window, gesturing animatedly to a small group. She looked polished, professional, every inch the successful entrepreneur. Marlene was there too, near the back, holding court with her tennis club friends. She wore a dramatic red coat and was gesturing broadly, clearly telling some story that had her audience laughing. Lauren joined the group. Marlene put an arm around her daughter's shoulders, squeezed tight, unity, support, the two of them against the world. They looked happy, unbothered, triumphant even. They thought they'd won. I pulled out my phone, opened my receipts folder. All those recordings, transcripts, financial documents. I walked across the street and into the boutique. The space was warm, crowded, buzzing with conversation. A small stage had been set up near the back with a microphone and banner. Professional cameras on tripods captured everything. Then Lauren saw me. Her smile froze. The champagne flute in her hand trembled slightly. She started moving toward me. "Aaron," she said quietly, "what are you doing here?" "Public event. I'm the public. Please don't do this. Not here, not now." Marlene appeared beside her daughter, protective and hostile. "You need to leave. This is a professional event." "Open to the public," I said calmly. A few nearby people started noticing the tension, conversations quieting. Lauren's voice dropped to a whisper. "Aaron, I'm begging you. I know you're angry. I know I hurt you, but please don't ruin this for me." I looked at her, saw the fear behind her polished makeup, the desperation behind her professional smile. Lauren's hand touched my arm, light and trembling. "Please," she whispered again. I looked past her to the stage where someone was adjusting the microphone, looked at the cameras, ready to record. Then I spoke, clearly, loud enough for the nearby groups to hear. "That I just wanted to see you try to celebrate success built on lying to your investors about your business partner, the husband you tried to defraud while he was disabled." The words hit like a physical blow. Lauren's face went white. Marlene actually stepped back. "You told your investors I was a partner in this expansion, used my jewelry business as proof of your artisan connections, while simultaneously trying to strip me of everything I actually owned." More people were listening now, phones coming out, cameras turning. I pulled out my phone, opened the receipts folder. "Should I play this? The part where you and your mother discussed using my business credentials to attract furniture line investors, while planning to push me out of my actual business?" Complete silence now, everyone watching. Cameras definitely recording. "Or maybe the part where you laughed about how I'd sign anything because I couldn't hear you, how I was basically furniture myself?" Lauren was crying now, makeup running, the polished facade completely shattered. I walked toward the stage. Lauren grabbed my arm, actually sobbing. "Please don't do this. I'll lose everything." I stopped. "You already lost everything that mattered. You lost it the moment you decided I was furniture instead of a partner. This is just the public acknowledgement." I stepped onto the stage. The room had gone completely silent. 50 people, frozen, watching, cameras rolling. I tapped the microphone. Feedback squealed, a sound I heard perfectly. "Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I'm Aaron Hale, a Lauren's soon-to-be ex-husband. I just wanted everyone here to know that the artisan partnerships and business connections she's been promoting for this furniture line, they're fabricated. She has no actual partnerships. What she does have is a documented history of fraud, manipulation, and attempted exploitation of a disabled spouse." Gasps, whispers. Marlene trying to push through the crowd toward the stage. "I have recordings, financial documents, medical records, everything proving she systematically tried to steal my business assets while pretending to care for me during a medical crisis." Lauren collapsed into a chair, hands over her face, completely broken. "So, if you are investing in this venture, you might want to reconsider, because you're investing in someone who will exploit anyone, even her own disabled husband, for personal gain." I stepped off the stage. The crowd parted. Marlene stood frozen, face bright red, unable to speak. I walked toward the exit, paused at the door, and looked back one last time. Lauren was surrounded, boutique staff trying to calm her, investors demanding answers, cameras circling like vultures. Marlene was already talking to a reporter, her face tight, her explanations unraveling. I stepped outside into the sharp January air. Every sound felt crystal clear. The wind, the traffic, the distant sirens. Behind me, Lauren's microphone screeched again. A harsh, jarring noise she couldn't escape, couldn't mute, couldn't pretend wasn't happening. But I heard it perfectly.